Hello and welcome back to my new podcast, Yorkshire Talks, where we're interviewing, having conversations with some incredible folk from here in Yorkshire, talking all things weird and wonderful. And welcome back, Christine.
Hello, thanks for having me back for another week.
I know, I'm so glad that you're here as my co-host this week. And we had a great time last time, and I'm looking forward to some more conversations this week.
We do. We're just delving into what makes Yorkshire so special and what makes the people that come from Yorkshire so special, and finding out a little bit more because we're just very nosy, aren't we?
Yeah. Very nosy. We want to know everything, which is so exciting. And this week's guest is actually a personal friend of mine, somebody I've known for a little while now, so we're excited to chat with Danika Priim, who is here and has had 2 meteoric careers already.
She does. She had a 6-year career as a star of rugby league, playing for Bradford Bulls, Leeds Rhinos, and representing her country for England, but now is hitting the big time as a TV commentator and a pundit on the big channels.
Yes, exciting. And Danika retired from the sport that she loves in 2021 after earning every major domestic honour as well as an international acclaim, which is incredible.
Sounds really weird when you say it out loud.
But also started life off as a teacher, didn't you?
Yes.
Working with particularly challenging children we've had experienced very, very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a teacher since I was 16, probably. Not had, the most affluent or, loving upbringing myself, trials and tribulations, and always want to be a teacher. Initially thought I'll be the PE cliche type of thing, and then went into maths, did the mainstream stuff. It just wasn't for me politically and how, schools are run these days. So I moved into alternative provisions where I found my love. So social, emotional and mental health children from all kinds of backgrounds, those that autism and, on the spectrum, ADHD, and those that are a little more troubled, that may have been in prison, may have trouble with drugs and county lines and things like that. So it's a real mixed bag of children. It's challenging in its own right, but it's also really rewarding. Totally different from mainstream school. And I've learned to be so much more patient and so much more grateful and to not judge anybody, which I think is the biggest lesson that I've learned. Being a teacher anyway, you go into different scenarios, but you never know somebody's background, so never judge somebody. You could have a bad day and people just say, oh, you're angry or you're upset or they're not very nice, but really, until you know what's going on.
Oh, well, exactly. And that must be so difficult as well to kind of gauge and have those conversations and know how to open, I guess, how you open up to the kids and how kind of in depth you can go really when you know some of that incredible background that they've come from.
Yeah, I think I'm super honest, probably a little bit too honest and open, because I haven't had the greatest upbringing, but at the time you don't know any different. So as you're growing up, you think that's the norm, and not having money and coming. We were poverty stricken. I got a job at 11 to 12 years old to help support the family to buy food.
Oh, what job did you do? Wow.
My first job was best job ever. I was a kennel maid in a dog kennels.
Oh wow, amazing!
But at 11 years old, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And the highlight of my favourite story, my claim to fame at the time was, I had a phone call and I was like, hello, and we did like flea baths and it was groomers and a kennel. Yeah, Miss Brown, I want to bring my dog in for a flea bath. So bear in mind, I'm 11, 12 years old at the time. And I don't want to give away too much, I'll carry on. So I was like, yeah, flea bath, or can you bring the dog in? What dog is it? Oh, it's a mongrel. Fine, no problem. Casual bath. They're like, oh, Danika, you can do this one. Because if it was like a poodle or something, the owners would take care because it was a bit more precious. But when it came to general flea baths and mongrels, so went outside, went to reception just before time. Mel B. It was Miss Brown, it was Mel B. So imagine 11, 12-year-old me, I was like, couldn't physically take the dog. And it was the height of Spice Girls. So I was in like my Spice Girls era. I was always sporty Spice mind. But Mel B brought her dog to the kennels, 11, 12-year-old me. I got paid £1 an hour, but that was the winner.
That is amazing. And what was she like then with you?
I just remember sitting there being like, I don't think I've ever been starstruck since, because the amount of starstruck I was at that point was just ridiculous. And the owner came, yeah, no problem, you sign this, and she was signing away, and I was like, do I rip the paper? Do I steal her autograph? Do I ask her for one?
Do you know she's really...
Needless to say, a mum picked the dog back up.
That's a brilliant, what a fantastic story.
Do you know what I met Mel B when I was at school, because she went to intake and I was at intake, and she came back and it was literally just after the Spice Girls. I think they'd just split up and she was doing a documentary with
No shame, I
TV.
cried. When they broke up, I cried.
I know. Well, I did. I was a massive Spice Girls fan.
Spices here.
I know, 2 Spice Girls fans. And I, do you know, it's one of the most, exactly like you, so starstruck to see Mel B when she came into the school hall and then she was talking to everybody. And I was just like...
She's got an aura, hasn't she, about her?
Yeah, you can just feel a vibe, can't you? And that's what I meant. Well, I don't know what I remember. I just remember a Spice Girl came near me. That was it.
What an incredible story for your very first job.
Podcast done.
Danika, because I mean, you were just telling us now you went to ballet school. You're a trained ballet dancer. So how did that lead to rugby?
Yeah, so I've got 3 brothers. So growing up, you know, I did when you were younger and like the baby ballet type 3-4-year-old ballet. And then we didn't have the money for me to carry on. So I just joined my brothers in playing with football and rugby in the park. And then when I got to high school, actually Mel B's dance teacher, Jodie Doble, she was working as a dance teacher at my school, got into dance, really loved it and enjoyed it, did lots of competitions, and she offered me free dance lessons at the time. And so my friend's mum would take us. And then when I went to sixth form, I moved out of the home just at the end of, just before I was 16. So at 15, 16, I moved out and I moved to Bradford. And I started dancing at the DM Academy in Shipley. And quickly they put me through my teaching. So essentially I could teach whilst paying for my own lessons whilst earning a bit of money.
Wow.
So
you were very young then, 15, 16.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who were you living with?
So I moved in with my auntie for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't come from the most academic family. But I knew that I always wanted to go to university. I knew there was money, and it sounds really bad, but I knew there was money in education for people that went to university for the first time. There was also like a weekly allowance for people that went to sixth form. So it was kind of a way of getting an education, but also making some money. I had like a weekend job like you do. So it was all, sounds really bad, as it was all about the money, but not in that sense. It was a survival thing, really.
Exactly.
And I'm really stubborn. So people told me that people like me didn't go to university. So my first degree was in sports science and medicine, because I thought, what can I do that not only is university, but is like the top end? And I didn't get the grades to do medicine on its own. So I did sports science and medicine as my first degree.
Which is an achievement in itself, though. That is amazing to go and do that.
Yeah, and I've got a level of intelligence. I don't want to put myself down, but I'm not the most academic. I'm just really stubborn. So when somebody tells me I can't, I'm like, okay, what do I have to do to get there? It wasn't the right degree for me because I wanted to be a teacher. So that's how stupid I was and stubborn. It was like a silly excuse, but so yeah, and that was my whole way through university. I was teaching dance and being trained to dance at Disneyland Paris, Royal Albert Hall.
Disneyland Paris?
Yeah. So they do like a summer kind of dance school where you can take dance schools so you do the parade, then you perform on stage.
Oh, you're amazing.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, cheesy as anything. And then spent 4 days at Disneyland Paris, which is something I would never have done as a teenager / early 20s anyway, myself. So yeah, I had a crazy, and did auditions and did like events. And then I'm naturally quite a big person, and dancers are under 5'8" and petite. And I used to go to auditions, and I'm not somebody that would ever put anybody else down to better myself. So in dancing and in the arts, and much like in TV, sometimes you need to push yourself to the front at the detriment of somebody else, and it just wasn't for me. So when I went to university, I was like, what can I do that's the opposite of that? I'd always been a rugby league fan since 1996. I remember studying the South Stand at Headingley with my brothers, who were also big rugby fans. So that was it was £10 for a child season ticket at the time. For the whole season for Leeds.
£10
yeah.
for a season ticket?
So we could manage that. And then that was your weekend entertainment. And if not, I mean, I've confessed to Gary Hetherington now, but used to climb up the Western Terrace over the wall. There's a lamppost by the wall, and if you push your feet against it and climb up, you can hop over and you're in the stadium. They've obviously changed it a little bit now. It's not that easy. And one day I confessed that to Gary. That's the owner of Leeds Rhinos. So yeah, I went to university and then started playing rugby union, because that's what was about in the universities at the time. And that kind of, progressed from there, ended up playing for West Park Bramhope, and ended up captain of my county and playing for North of England. And then got the phone call in 2015 and switched to rugby league.
Wow.
Very random.
Yeah. Are we still dancing alongside the rugby?
No, I stopped dancing probably when I did my second degree I did a second degree in teaching, because I always wanted to be a teacher, and I was like, well, I've shot myself in the foot here. To get onto a PGC at the time, which was the 1-year teaching degree, it was like 2,000 applicants for 12 places. So I thought, instead of pushing it, I'll just do the last, at Leeds Met at the time, last 3-year teaching course. So I went back, and so I stopped dancing probably 2005 maybe, and taught probably until 2010, 9 or 10 in a dance school, and then I did like dance teaching I taught dance within schools, so just as a teacher. So, but officially stopped dancing myself probably,
So then this led to this incredible career in rugby.
Yeah, crazy.
Which not only you've obviously teams like Bradford Bulls, teams like Leeds Rhinos, and playing for England. I mean, international honours. What was that like? Especially, I mean, obviously with the Yorkshire clubs as well, that must have meant something to you.
Yeah, it was huge. My family from Bradford originally, so I actually started at Stanningley, which is like a smaller club near Bramley, and that way. It's 2015. I was playing rugby union. I'd just come back from snapping my ankle. I played at Twickenham with university 3 times, which is like the top headquarters of rugby union. Like, it's the best stadium in England. And I'd unfortunately had an ankle reconstruction playing rugby union. Got back to playing in 2015. I had a phone call in February from Chris Chapman, head coach of England Women Rugby League. Do you fancy playing? Now, for those of you who know rugby, there's a real rugby union, rugby league. The two shall never cross. There's a rivalry. Rugby union's the rah-rah sport, which is ironic that I played that originally. And rugby league is like the more working class sport. And that's a standing joke. It's how it is.
What is the actual difference? What is the difference between rugby league and rugby union? Because I don't know.
The rule. There's lots of different bits of rules.
Okay.
Essentially, run forward, pass backwards, score tries. Right. Both are the same. It's the intricate bits that are a lot different. Now, we'd be here for an hour plus.
Okay.
And I mean,
I'll go
10 times longer for you to try and figure it out. Run forward, pass back, hit them hard to stop.
Okay.
They're essentially the same, but there is...
I'm with you.
Yeah, there's a few more rules in union. So he ranked in the 15, do you fancy playing? I was like, I can't really do that. And he was like, look, I've been watching you for a couple of years. I want you for the 2017 World Cup in Australia. Okay, where do I sign up? Really fickle, but that's how it came about. And then I made my England debut in the June 2015.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
To just get that phone call and it just completely changed everything.
It is, but then, it's changed since, hasn't it? You didn't get any money for it. Unlike the men's game, you probably had to take time off work.
Well, June 2015, I paid £300 to go play for my country.
Right, you had to pay yourself to play,
which is less than 10 years ago. So in the grand scheme of where women's sport is going, I paid, and I'd pay it again. I played for my country. So we flew out, and I played, and I was really fortunate at the time. I was working at a school in Calderdale in Sorby Bridge, and they gave me the week off paid. So I was really grateful for that. And then played a couple of times when it was luckily in holidays. But when I went to the World Cup in 2017, I took 5 weeks off. I was head of PE in a really high achieving school in Bradford. And I thought at the time, right, your head of PE is going to be in a World Cup. This is going to work out fine. I'll be fine. No, got it completely. Had to take it off unpaid.
Right.
And obviously 5 weeks is a whole month. This is more than a month. Yep. It's really significant. Everything was paid by England to go out there and do it, but equally you still have spending money. So, it was...
Yeah, and you still got your expenses back in England.
Yeah.
So still paying your rent or your mortgage.
Yeah, exactly that. So, but again, it was... At the time, there was no different. And there was nothing on the horizon to say things would be different. So you just do what...
Accepted it.
I was in a World Cup. You know,
absolutely.
I would have paid again to do that. I represent my country in a World Cup. So for how bad it was, looking back now, at the time, it was just do what you have to do to get there.
So you must be really pleased at the way things are going for women's sport in general, football and rugby, that they're much higher profile now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that, I don't know if there's what goes on in between the sports in terms of governing bodies, but why are the English Cricket Board and the FA and the Rugby Union, the Rugby League and whatever else, why is everyone not getting together? Because the English Cricket Board, they've got paid professionals, football have paid professionals. How have you gained, it's the sponsor and the endorsements and the money financially, because the Rugby Union did it, but it only was sustainable for 2 years because they had a load of money. Yes, we're going to make you all professional, 2 years, and then everyone was out of a job.
Right.
Whereas Rugby League is really small marginal gains, which is what it needs to be because it's not the most affluent sport. The men's isn't the best paid sport. And I think they're doing it the right way. You know, and there's 4 teams that are offering professional contracts in the sense that they're paid annually, but they're still not enough to survive on. I think you're looking at about £4,000 or £5,000 for top flight.
Right.
So it's a professional contract of expenses, I'd say, but still, it's the right stepping stones. And some teams are paying winning bonuses. Some teams are paying playing bonuses. So they're all paying what they can afford to, which makes it more sustainable and consistent, which is the right way to go. So this World Cup that we saw in 2022 was the first time the women got paid to participate. So they had the same participation fees as the males, which was amazing. The only difference is the men are on a contract from the clubs as well, so they still get paid.
Yeah.
So there is still a bit of, a bit of a difference, but to know that you're going into World Cup and getting paid to play in that World Cup, how great is that? And it's only going to get better, and as they develop and progress, and the spectator numbers are getting bigger, so therefore and sponsorships getting bigger, and the sooner more people get involved in it, and the sooner there are girls becoming athletes now, so you want to sponsor them. It's not just a girl that's come off the street and put a shirt on. It's a real athleticism about as well, and that's going to attract more and more people.
Yeah. It's a game that's exciting as well. It's one thing. Now, obviously, you made that step when you retired from the rugby. That must have been a difficult decision to make, was it?
Yeah, it was an ego thing. So I'd said to my coaches in 2021, the day I stopped getting selected, I need you to tell me, because I want to go out enjoying the game. I want to go out not being wanted as such, but I don't want to spend a season on the bench or not being selected, and because it's honestly an ego thing, isn't it?
It's demotivating as well.
Well, it's just you want to go. I wanted to go out still loving the game, and it was getting more competitive, and the younger generation of girls coming through was ridiculous. And obviously, not being professional at the time, I was working quite a difficult job with dealing with lots of social workers and all of the different external agencies that come with alternative provisions, versus then rushing to training for 5 o'clock twice a week for 4 hours, then playing on a Sunday, then fitting in 4 extra gym sessions. Something had to give, and it was where the money was coming in that I had to give, which was my job. So it was the right time. I played a grand final at Headingley in front of a record crowd. We didn't get the win, unfortunately, but I remember just taking my boots off and saying, that's it. The minutes I got were a little bit more limited than normal. The season had been a bit rocky, but I knew I wasn't going to make it through another season commitment-wise. And I think that's what it is to be up there, be an athlete, is the commitment. So I remember a young girl, which was amazing. She was like, Danika, can I have your boots? And I just went, yeah. And then I just started crying. I was like, I hadn't told anybody. And then Leanne from Leeds Rhinos, the media, she was like, you all right? And I said, that's it, I'm retired. She was like, we'll not put that out just yet. It's a bit emotional. Take a minute in a few days, but please don't tell anybody else in the media. You know what it's like in the media, that's it. So that was the Sunday. And the Thursday we did the official interview. The Friday it went out. And I remember thinking that this is the turn of women's rugby, because I was teaching. I'd looked at my phone at a break or lunchtime to over 250 messages and calls because the announcement, and I was like, this is not like any other retirement that somebody else in the game had done. This was retirement and there was no, I've retired, but then I'll come back next season. I was like, this has gone out. And, you know, the press that it got was incredible. And yes, it was about me, but also it was one of those moments of like, this is women's rugby on the rise.
Yeah.
The fact that something had been made so big of. And also I was like heartbroken, because as much as I had retired and I knew I had done, there was no, in a month's time, I can take a step back. And that was it. It was the press was so huge. I was like, and then I remember just crying for a week because I'd lost my identity. I'd made this decision. It was in hindsight, it was right. But who am I without the extra 30 hours of rugby that I put in a week? What is my purpose in life? What is my identity? Who am I? And I remember every Tuesday and Thursday of pre-season that the girls went back to, just crying. And I was still in all the group. And as you start getting removed from all of the WhatsApp groups and the... honestly, every single... And I'm not an emotional person. Like my friends laugh at me. I'm a little bit of a rock inside because not much makes me go. But I wasn't just crying. I was in my room, dark room, under the pillow type, sobbing. Because the game was on the rise. Am I now a nobody? Like, how do I still be involved? I've lost my hobby, my love, my sport. And mostly I've lost my family and my friends, because the girls become, every time you've got a bad day, you rock up to training and it's like a little bit of therapy of getting everything out, go and train and forget about it. And I remember just thinking, I'm not going to survive this if I don't find something. Genuinely as deep as that. I'd had an ACL reconstruction and I found that hard, but nothing compared to sitting there and feeling empty, completely empty.
And lost because it had been such a massive part of your life.
And I'd done little pieces in the media, but they were on International Women's Day and they were, you know, for women's finals, and they were very tokenistic tick box exercise. And I mean that in the greatest of respect, because it's great. I was a tick box exercise, which has now led to a career. So somebody has to be it, but I never thought that it would be. And it was January 2022 and Joe Gardner from Channel 4 rang me and said, do you want to be a part of the new Channel 4 coverage?
I know Joe,
Yeah.
I worked with him at Calendar,
Yeah, and he was more a videographer and filmmaker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Rather than a producer. So for him, it was kind of a new step as well. And I thought he meant like the one show, a bit like, but he didn't. It was 2 seasons with Channel 4, and off the back of that, did more Sky Sports stuff and did more stuff with the BBC. And the end of 2022 was a pundit for the World Cup on the BBC, which then meant, and I always find this really embarrassing, and I don't know, I'm not more proud of it, that November 2022, I got nominated by Broadcast Sports Awards for Pundit of the Year. And I've got a picture of 6 of us. It was me, Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville, Ian Wright, David Coulthard and Ruby Walsh. And I've got the picture printed out. And I was going to bring that, but I was like, that is still for me. I went down to London. I was on the red carpet. Channel 4 was up for broadcast, like sports nomination of the year.
What an achievement. What an achievement to be there.
Again, a bit like the Mel B. Walked into a room with everybody you've ever met, ever known from, I watch sports. Yeah. Like Gabby Logan and all of them. I was like, I cannot win.
Did you have imposter syndrome?
And I still do to this day. Like,
yeah.
I remember turning around to Joe and just saying, I don't want to win. And he was like, don't be so ridiculous. I was like, I am not walking on stage with these people in this room. And it was like, I do not deserve to be here. Like, it's my first year. Like, how rude. And he was like, well, clearly you do. They've had hundreds of nominees. And
that's a testament to you and what you've done and how far you've come. But
I don't think you'll ever get over that feeling of, because I work with so many great, like Sam Tompkins and John Wilkie, I work with so many great pundits who I feel like I learn from.
Yeah.
So how dare I be the rugby league like representative of pundits? It is imposter syndrome, but it's hard to not feel like, is it the tokenistic thing? And it wasn't, because there's loads of women up for in the original pool of, you know, of nominees that did the Euros and the World Cup, you know, for football. So it's not until afterwards where you sit down and you're like, oh, actually there are, but it was so overwhelming, but brilliant.
I do deserve this. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Ian Wright walked up to me and, oh, hi, Danika, nice to meet you. Ian Wright knows my name. My brother's a big Arsenal supporter, so I took a picture and I was like, look who I'm with.
Fantastic. You did speak recently, though, Danika, about one of the downsides of your new role, and that is that you have been trolled, you've suffered some abuse because you're a woman in a man's world.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been very difficult. I know it's not, it's only probably a small minority of people out of all the people that watch you and admire you. But how have you coped with that?
I think the hardest thing has been that it's been rugby league fans. I think it had been any Joe Blogs from any other place, I wouldn't be as bothered. But it's a group of fans that, and you know what? In media, you put yourself out, you give an opinion, you might say things that are right or wrong, or people can you have an opinion, so people can have an opinion on you, and people won't like me, and that's absolutely fine. But to then get really personal, and I had it in boxes like, if you come to Old Trafford, we're going to slit your throat. That's a death threat.
Well, yeah, that's horrendous.
Yeah, but again, at the time, I was like, they'll respond and say, okay, meet me at gate X, Y, and Z, and call their bluff. And then you're like, well, actually, you can't, because the what if is much stronger than. And I remember I actually rang Helen Skelton, and who has become a really great friend of mine, and I'm so, so grateful for her, you know, her knowledge and experience and her guidance, really. And she just was like, you report that and you send it, and you ignore it, and you block, you delete. But then it comes to coming to Old Trafford, and you're walking down, you've parked your car, and you're walking down on your own, and I'm turning around, and I remember I'm going to walk pitch side at Old Trafford, which in my I'm like, how great is that? And most amazing. Again, being a sports fan, strutting pitch side at Old Trafford, I'm going to do something that's the most amazing experience. But I'm literally walking whilst turning my back. I'm walking against a wall because I'm thinking, they can only come from one side or one angle. And I remember that point of like, how dare they make me feel like that? Like, you know, I'm not the type of woman that walks down the street at night and worries. Like, you know, I'm quite a probably nonchalant type of, I probably don't think enough about the dangers of things. You know, but I remember walking down, and I remember going to the toilet and being like, you cannot cry. You've got to go film some stuff now. Like, go get your hair and makeup done. And Helen just turned, hi Danika, how's it going? I was like, how dare they take that enjoyment away from me? And that's when I just thought, is it worth doing this? To feel like that for 10 minutes, for an hour, for a minute? Is that feeling, is it worth that? And it was one inbox, but there were so many more comments that were online, and your friends would text, you know, they screenshot them and send you them, and they do it because they care, but also it's like, I don't want to see them. I don't want to know about it. But it also comes off the back of a high profile person making it okay, doesn't it?
Yeah.
More recently in the media.
The comments targeted at you because you were a woman. It's not something that they would say to any pundit that they didn't agree with.
No. So Sam Tompkins, who's he's the pantomime villain of rugby league. You love him because he's one of the greatest all-time players, but you hate him because he's so good that any team that plays against him. He turned up to a Channel 4 and he was wearing his Catalan Dragons jacket. He went on air in his Catalan Dragons jacket whilst Catalan were playing. So we made a bit of a joke at half-time, and he was like, oh, Danika, take your Leeds Rhinos glasses off. And I just went, Sam, take your Catalan Dragons jacket off. I then turned up to do some commentary, which you're not in vision for. And it was snowing at the time, and I put on my big jacket, and it happened to be a Leeds Rhinos jacket. I wasn't in vision. It wasn't a Leeds Rhinos game, and I was doing commentary. And all of the things, how dare she, like every name under the sun. Like, and I was like, but a guy can be on air in a jacket in vision, and I can just keep warm. God forbid, in a snowy day. I hadn't taken a big enough jacket. It was in the back of my car. God forbid. And I was just like, that was kind of the turning point. And then I watched like a short documentary by Gary Neville and Jill Scott, and they'd switched Twitter handles for the day. So Gary Neville tweeted out as Jill, and Jill tweeted out as Gary. And the amount of abuse that Gary got being Jill compared to what Jill got being Gary. Gosh. And I think that really helped. I know it sounds really sadistic, but that helped that it wasn't a personal target. It was personally targeted in the sense that I'm a woman in a man's game. And I got, once the feature came out the other week about me, you know, saying that's, you know, about the trolling, some guy messaged me and he just said, sorry to hear about all the horrible comments you'd been getting. So I thought, oh, this is starting nicely. Yeah, but me and my group of friends will just never accept you. You shouldn't be involved in men's sport. You shouldn't be on screen. We just can't take you seriously, but all the best.
Honestly.
I remember you telling me about that. And I said to you, I just don't understand why there is this stigma around it and why.
You get the cliche, get back in the kitchen, go put the... Guys, my kitchen looks horrendous anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not very good.
Yeah.
I'm quite a tidy person, but not that great. You know
what to think though now? I mean, there are so many more female commentators in sports of every kind. You'd like to think by now it wasn't such an issue, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to please. I think we're a couple of generations away from that. And that's the best way to describe it. You've got to get rid of a couple of generations above where it isn't the norm, it isn't accepted. There's still that misogyny, and I'm not protecting them or kind of giving them an excuse, but it wasn't misogyny then, was it? It was just the norm.
Just the norm. But that doesn't make it right. And
no, absolutely not.
It shouldn't be allowed. And this is my whole thing with social media, I think, is the fact that this kind of behaviour is allowed. And like you just said before, that message was a death threat.
Yeah.
They threatened your life.
You've got people like, we know who it is, Mr. Joey Barton, who is a male role model in a huge... Football's the biggest sport in the world. When a male role model in football is saying it's okay to berate women in sport, you're only telling a younger generation, well, it's fine then, we shouldn't have women in sport. And it's about... I'm in such a privileged position where I can pay the pathway for maybe women in rugby league, or I can pay the pathway for girls that love rugby league that want to do something else in it. Like, I'm in a position where now I'm a role model and I need to be the best role model I can be. So there are people I don't like. There are pundits and commentators I don't think are great.
We should call them out.
No, but you know what? People won't like me. People might not like me being on this. Like, fair dues. Have your opinion. You don't like it. You know, just stop.
Yeah.
Don't text out about it. I think Danika's rubbish.
Yeah.
But they hide it behind the keyboard, aren't they?
And it's always the people without a profile picture.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. They don't have a profile picture. You can't, and they've got no followers.
But it's the misconception. I have only just stopped saying, when I do like talks for companies, I've just about stopped saying my introduction being the 5 misconceptions of women's rugby. We're not all lesbians and there are no shower scenes. At which point the men in the room go, oh. You're like, yeah, and I hate to break it to you, the shower scenes, you know, women's open age is from 17. They're still quite young, so it's wrong. And honestly, it's just over the last year I've stopped having to say that.
Gosh, honestly.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is.
Are you still teaching now at the same time as you're doing the commentating?
Very loosely. Last year I took a bit of a sabbatical off to kind of jump in. Missed it a little bit too much. Went back into teaching, and I don't want to sound fickle, but teaching will always be there. So I am now winding my way out of teaching. Yeah. I've still got a few loose ends to tie up with the children that I teach and getting them, you know, I teach GCSE maths, and although they're not going to get the A-star grades and stuff, for them to sit in a room for 3 hours and do an exam is a huge achievement. So that'll be towards the end of May, June, and by then... Yeah, so
then it'd be full time.
By the end of well, it's not just TV; it's all the corporate things that come from. And I say box tick, and I hope people don't see me. It's not a negative thing, but somebody has to be the woman. Somebody has to be the LGBTQ. Somebody has to be the ethnic minority. Somebody has to start that to then make it the norm. So I'm really grateful that I just happen to be, it's right time, right place, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
both have supported Rob Burrow with this Strictly Dancing event. Now, going off your background, Danika, it sounds to me like you did have a bit of an advantage as a dancer in the show.
Public service announcement. I am the person that watches Strictly Come Dancing and goes, it's not fair they come from a theatre school. It's not fair they've got dance experience. Never have I felt more stripped of a dance talent until I started doing this, because ballet's very... soft knees and turnout and delicate floaty arms. The Latin dance, the rumba, was sharp, strong, solid, and everybody in the world counts 1, 2, 3, 4. A bit like Matt and his jive, the simple one. You got the easy dance.
It's not simple.
Pictures.
He was phenomenal.
I'm telling you, it was not simple. It is so fast.
It is fast.
The fastest thing I've
ever
had to
rumba,
do.
why do they miss off count 1 at the start? It's pause, 2, 3, 4, 1, which means that counting music and counting rhythm becomes completely different. And I think, honestly, being a bit of a maths teacher, I think we have to be slightly on the spectrum, because I am anyway. I'm very particular. I could not count like that, which then I couldn't hear the rhythm that they needed me to hear. So I take it back that if you've been on Strictly Come Dancing, I used to, berate people for having experience.
I was done A-level dance for a year.
So you didn't want to say that at the time,
but
did you?
It is like you said, it is very, very different. It's not the same as like having years and years.
Did you say that he played the whole "I don't know what I'm doing" game?
I didn't.
All along.
I've never.
You were just there for the sparkles, weren't you?
I was the sparkles. But you were incredible.
As were you. It was a great event run by Rob's sisters, Jo and Claire. To have so many people there and an event, and to have Maya Burrow dancing and opening the show, and Lizzie Jones singing, and for me, it wasn't just. It was great. It was people from all over. But it was a real Yorkshire affair in that sense. That it was.
That was the good thing about
having the family there.
People from Yorkshire taking part.
From
Yorkshire and Lancashire and Cheshire.
And are you competitive, Danika?
If you told me that you could count the threads on this map before me, I'd say you couldn't. And I'd be stubborn enough to stay here and do it.
I know you would.
Counting you.
I've got 3 brothers, and my life was spent. I come from a, not just my upbringing, but I come from an Eastern European family where I was the first woman for 10 years. So my aunt, 10 years before me and 10 years below me until the other women came around. So I was in a very male-dominated family anyway. Never wanted to be beaten by my brothers. Never wanted to. So I think competitiveness is. I'm a good loser in the sense that if the right person beats me, that's fine. But I will do anything and everything.
It's so funny.
Honestly, it gets me.
I love that. If the right person beats me.
One of the subjects of the podcast is, what is Yorkshire and what is Yorkshireness to you? How would you sum up, the fact that you've been born and bred in Yorkshire? What difference has that made to your personality?
Oh, I'm so loyal and proud. I'm so proud of where I come from. I've in my older years, I've been really lucky. I've travelled. I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and I've travelled around, and I get to go all sorts of places. But you cut me like a stick of rock, and it says Yorkshire and Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah,
no matter who I work from, what I do, and I'm so proud of where I come from. I think it's such a beautiful place, and I don't want to do the whole cliche. You can have the city and the hills, but I can finish work in the city, my paddleboard in the back of the car, and within half an hour be on a river somewhere. Right. And I think it's not only become, I'm so excited for the warm weather to come because that's one of my first things that I do, but where else in the world can you do it? Like, it's amazing. Yeah. And I am proud of where I come from and where I grew up and the things that have come from Yorkshire and the sports teams. Honestly, I'm a die-hard Yorkshire woman. Not a huge fan of a Yorkshire accent though.
Right.
On myself. My brothers have got a really strong Yorkshire accent, but I don't know if it's because I went to university and I was in quite an international university, and whether it's that or just from travelling around, but I love a Yorkshire accent on everybody else but myself.
So when you're listening to yourself now on TV,
cringe.
You do have a really strong, a strong Yorkshire accent. It's a northern accent.
When I'm angry or when I'm upset, then it really comes out.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you?
Which one? Angry or upset?
Oh.
Angry.
When have I been angry?
Dance rehearsal.
Oh no, it was the week. No, it was the week before Blackpool. I just got my dance shoes, so I'm 2.5 inches higher than what I've been rehearsing, which meant that all of my turns were out, all of my steps were out, and I nearly took a shoe off and threw it at Matt. But Kirsty Marshall, the dance teacher, just went, "You've got the Blackpool jitters, it's fine," and it was.
It was. Just saying that. We'll say that.
Not a diva, but yeah.
Well, one of the things we've asked, isn't it, is to bring in something that means something special to you. And you've brought 2 things, haven't you, Danika?
Yeah, because why stick to one? So they're both on the same thing. So I think it does count as one. Mm-hmm. So, and I've just decorated my room, so it was off the wall, so I thought it was ideal. Right. So this is my morning view with my coffee in the World Cup.
Wow.
So this is the hotel balcony where every morning I sat and had my coffee before the madness of the day.
Fabulous.
So I was in Australia, in Sydney, and obviously you represent your country, so it's the best, the biggest achievement of my life. but you're in the most intense environment. So every night we would get a schedule, what time you wake up, where to go, what to wear, what you've got to eat, what you've got to drink, how much you've got to drink. Everything is taken out of your control. So I'd get up an extra hour before everybody else and do the one thing I could control, which was have a coffee and just before, because you had to, this is a bit graphic, but your first wee of the day had to be in a pot because it had to be tested for how hydrated you were.
Oh, really?
You had to weigh in every morning. You had to do certain tests every single morning. So before you even started the day, you had this really strict routine. And then we were there for however long. And every hour of my day, every minute of my day was accounted for until downtime at 9:30 or at 6 a.m. in the morning when I sat in my coffee. So it might not mean anything. And it's the ANZ Stadium, which is where I'm a big rugby league fan, which is where the Sydney Roosters used to play out of. So just happened, my coffee was just facing that stadium. And with that is a book that was made for me before I flew out to the World Cup of messages from all of my friends and pictures from all of my friends that, you know, that got put together for me. And at the back is a little bit of a diary of the start of what the World Cup was. So
Incredible. It's
the biggest achievement of my life, you know, and I ran out and played in a World Cup in an England shirt and sang my national anthem the other side of the world. So yeah, these are my two things.
They're lovely things to honestly, and both sort of very moving in their own way, aren't they? So
and I think it's just a reminder, like this is just, I love the view. And it's a really weird thing to have had printed out. But for me, I'm still, every time I look, I'm sat there.
Yeah.
And it's like a bit of a weird, peaceful kind of, you know, I actually did look at, you know, those big murals you can get on the wall as a piece of wallpaper. I did actually look at it and I was like, that's a bit too far. And then this,
I understand it's a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a moment. It's a moment that will be imprinted in your memory.
Yeah, but I think this is like every now and then you forget. And I look at it and I actually found it in a box in January, and I was like, how dare I keep it in a box? So it's kind of like just on the side now as a bit of a decoration, but it's kind of one of those things when you look and you're like, oh, do you know what? Actually, you did really well.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Danika, you've done really well. You are going to do really well.
Thank
Can't
you.
wait to see everything that's happening next. Thank you so much, Danika. Danika Priim. It's been great.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you very much, guys.
Amazing. That's been Yorkshire Talks this week. Thank you to Danika for being here, and we shall see you next week with another guest and talking all things weird and wonderful in Yorkshire.